What's up, guys? This is Tascione with Academy.fm, and today we're going to be diving into Ableton Live 10 and sort of figuring out what's new and what has been changed. So, first thing is I really like Ableton 10 a lot. It's a little different from Ableton 9. It took me a little bit to get it used to with just the different clip views, but I really like it overall. And so today we're just going to dive in and check out what's new. So the first thing I'm going to go through are the audio effects, because I think those are the most important changes. So the first addition to Ableton Live 10 is this echo. This is what I'm going to go over first. So this is just like a really cool sort of delay effect. But let's go in. I want to find a loop that we can play around with. So I'm just going to use this. So let's listen to it without the echo. All right, let's put this. This is in 118. Okay, so this is our loop. We're in 128. That's what it sounds like without the echo. Now let's turn it on. So it's similar to the simple delay and the ping pong, but it has much more control. So with the simple delay, you can only set the dry wet and the feedback and the rate. If you look here, we can do all of those things: dry wet, feedback, rate, and we can do much more. With the ping pong delay, we can select the rate and the filter, dry wet, and feedback, and it has that ping pong effect. And right here we have the ping pong effect, and we can select the filter. So the echo is just superior above both. So I'm just going to flip through the different sort of settings and what you can do. So over here we have the rate, and if we're on ping pong, you'll see that these lines are staggered because they're bouncing back and forth. And if we switch to stereo, they become connected. Mid-side, I haven't messed with yet, but I'm definitely going to mess with it a little bit here. Also, you can bring it right here, and it's dotted, triplet, or 16th. So we're just going to take it to notes, so it's... So we have our rate right there. We have our feedback. So down here, we can also set our filter. So let's go into modulation, because we can actually play with this a little bit. So basically what this is doing is there's an internal LFO that we can have control these two things. So you can set the rate here. So I have it on a quarter note. And you could select the phase between 0 and 180. So we had it at 90, and you can hear it sort of bouncing back and forth. So basically what it's doing is this LFO is controlling the left and the right modulation differently. So you can get you can almost add a really cool stereo effect with this delay by using this LFO to control the filter. All right, so before we jump ahead, let's just mess around with this view mode, because the filter is cool, and I just wanted to show you the modulation, how to control the filter. But you can actually And you can disconnect these and have the left doing something different than the right. So you just get this really cool like view mode. I don't know, it just looks really fun to play with. So another thing that we can do is we can play with this reverb knob. So we have this post reverb. So assuming that this is determining that the reverb is post delay. So we could set it as pre. And that's actually really cool because it adds a reverb before the delay and before the modulation. Oh, and you can also place it within the feedback loop if we have this feedback up here. Oh, super harsh, but a cool effect if you want to make some weird effects. Oh, it's still going. Oh, that's really cool. That's a really cool effect. So I'm just going to leave this on post for now. We can set the decay time. Basically how long the tail of the reverb is. But also we can set the stereo. So we can make it completely mono or the delay just like very wide. So yeah, really cool. So let's go into the modulation. We messed with this filter. Let's mess with this. So this is actually like adjusting the pitch for each one. So you can get these sort of wonky echoes. So I'm going to put the feedback loop back on. And it's cool. It just made like a little like wobble right there. But yeah, this little mod is really cool. Also, you saw me click this ×4. Basically, this just times the modulations by 4. So let's go into this character tab. So there is a gate which shuts off the it basically shuts everything off once it drops below this certain point. So you see if I have this up really high. And it looks like it only works while it's running. So this is pretty cool. So the feedback just doesn't keep going and going. But this is my favorite part, is this ducking. Because what I've used to have to do is make a weird audio group and set up a sidechain within that audio group. But now with this ducking, it sidechains it for me. So what this does is this like successfully will pull back the delay when the dry signal is present. And that just helps it stand out more. So if we play this right here, you can hear that the delay is much more present. And we can hear it a lot with the reverb as well. So it really helps to add that effect, but it will help the dry signal cut through a lot harder. So let's go to this noise. Sort of adds like a white noise. And this repitch, oh, this is cool too. Let's go to the wobble though. That wobble is a really cool effect too. You could basically just make things really unique and wonky, like pretty easy. So this repitch is another cool tab too. So when you adjust the pitch on a hardware delay, it sort of gives a weird pitching effect, and you'll see that as I change this. So when you change the delay, it will adjust the pitch. So basically what this character is for is you can turn that off. I personally think it's a really cool effect to have on, so I'm definitely going to leave it on whenever I do it. But, you know, it's up to you. You have it there for you. So that is pretty much everything for the echo. So the next thing I'm going to go into is the pedal. So the pedal is supposed to be emulating a like a guitar pedal distortion effect. And that's pretty much exactly what it does, and it does it really well. So I used to try to use amp for this and overdrive and saturator, and I just don't think it sounds as good as this. So I'm going to find a guitar loop so we can really get a good vibe for this. All right, so let's use this. And this is in 110, so let's take it down to 110. So when we have the pedal off, this is what it sounds like. Really clean, and if we turn it on without touching anything. So, yeah, it just gives it a nice little crunchy sound, but it's very natural sounding. So the main parameters that we're going to be messing with are the gain, these different types, and the EQs. And this is actually really cool, but this little tab below here sets the frequency range for the mid control. So if we turn this mid all the way down, we have it in the middle. That's pretty cool. It just gives you like little different timbres. Oops. So we also have a dry wet down here and this sub. So this sub, if you read it on the left, it says it toggles an additional low frequency boost. So I'm going to do a separate sound for that. I'm going to do that with an 808 because this doesn't have a lot of sub sounds. But let's go ahead and let's play around with this. There's three different pedal types. There's overdrive, which has warmth and it's pretty smooth. Distortion, which is tight and aggressive, and fuzz, which is like heavy and broken. So they sound really realistic. I grew up playing the guitar, and this is like exactly the kind of sound you would want in a stomp box. So let's go through the overdrive and we'll play around with these settings. Oh yeah, you can really hear that even on the guitars when you turn this sub on. It sort of boosts the lows a little bit. And this dry wet does a really good job of like blending the two. So yeah, really, really cool overall. So let's go ahead. I want to find an 808 and see what it sounds like with that sub boost. So this is the 808 naturally. And this is with it. So you could sort of add like a little bit more sub to it. That actually sounds really cool. That might be something I do use in the future. I mean, it sounds so much fatter, right? Wow. Pedal with an 808. That sounds pretty cool. So yeah, I think this pedal addition is really cool. And it just does like a cleaner job of distorting things than like the amp and the 808 and the overdrive. Like it's just a much more improved version of all of them in my opinion. So definitely something I'm going to be using a lot. The next one is definitely going to be everyone's favorite and was definitely my most anticipated plugin, and that is the drum bus. So I'm going to find a drum loop. I'm just gonna make a drum loop real quick. So I'm gonna go ahead, group this. So we'll call it kick, snare, hi-hat, loop. And that's pretty much all I want. Bring this back up to 150. All right. Got a simple kick pattern. Sure, let's just rock with that for now. And let's get a hi-hat loop in here. All right, that's okay for now. Let's get another one. Okay, so that is our drum loop right there. So let's go ahead and let's bring up this drum bus and I'll explain everything. All right, so right off the bat, when you open up the drum bus, the drive is at 20, and that's something to keep in mind because it's already going to be affecting everything. Some of these main parameters here is the drive, the crunch. This transients knob is pretty cool, and there's also like a compression. So this will compress it before the input distortion. So we can go ahead and add some compression. So you can really just make things crunchy, sort of glue it together. It's something that I use very sparingly, though. I think this could be helpful if you have like drum stems that need to be taken care of, but sometimes it just sort of crunches everything to the point of no return. Just even putting it on with all of these settings completely down. It sort of, drives everything. So this is the last one I'll sort of go into is this boom. This is actually pretty cool. It sort of adds like an 808, so it's pretty cool. And you can adjust the frequency here, and you'll see right there that it you can click on that to make it snap to the nearest whole note. So you can actually use this to like make 808s if you just have a kick and you're like, I want to make an 808. It's pretty cool. You can sort of do that with it. So what I would personally use this for if I was going to do anything is I would definitely parallel process this, because maybe you just want to add like a touch of just a little bit of a really saturated drum bus. And you can really even get noticeable differences with the dry wet being all the way at like 2%. Just if you just want to liven the drums a little bit, it's good for that. So that is it for the drum bus, but definitely a really, really cool effect that they added. All right, so the next thing we're going to go into is the improved audio effects. So there's only two that really come to mind here, and this is the EQ. And I have my EQ set up differently, so maybe I can go... No, so this is just how my default EQ is set up. But the only difference about this is that with a normal EQ, this would have been pressed up against the end, like an Ableton 9. But this EQ can actually go all the way down to 10 hertz. And you can see that a quarter of the window is right here. So, like a quarter of this window is just relying or just spotlighting the low end. So you can really like hone in on this. And then you'll see as I scroll up, the values just get increasingly larger and larger. So we're over halfway through the EQ window and we're only at 500 hertz. So you can see after 500, when it jumps to 1,000, it really goes up fast, especially when it gets to 4,000. I mean, it jumps all the way up to 22,000 real fast. But this is very useful because those low frequencies are a lot more important to EQ than the high ones. So this gives you like a lot of room to sort of get in there and do that. So you can really clean up your low end because it allows you to go below 30. So before, if you were to roll off the low end, it would have to be at 30. And sometimes there are some frequencies that you can hear down there. So it's really useful to be able to roll off at like 20, you know? So, other than that, there's nothing else about the EQ that's changed, but it is very useful having all that extra room down in the low end. The other improved audio effect is the utility, and I use the utility the utility in the EQ I use more than any other effect ever. I use this all the time. What's been added is the gain knob used to only go down to -35, but now it goes down to infinity. So this is really useful because a lot of times I want to do volume automations and I don't want to use the main volume slider because then I can't adjust the overall volume. So what I had to do before was when this only went down to -35, I had to group this, open up the chain, and then actually map the chain volume to a macro knob. So now I had a full volume control that went all the way down to infinity. But now I don't have to do that anymore because the utility has done that for me. So that's really helpful. Another thing that's helpful is that you can turn on this mono rather than sliding the slider all the way down. There's just a mono button. And also what's useful is this bass mono. So basically what it does is you can set a set frequency and everything below that will be mono. So that's really useful for like mastering and making sure that all your lows are in mono for the master. So it's really useful, and it even provides like a little preview mode, an audition mode, so you can hear exactly what's becoming mono. So that is really useful as well. But besides that, that is all the audio effects that were either added or changed for Ableton 10. So now we're going to get into a synth that was added, and this is called Wavetable. So you'll see that there's an added synth down here in addition to operator. So let's go ahead and I'm going to open up a new MIDI tab. And we're going to open up the Wavetable. And what's great about this is it has the same layout as Ableton, or all the other Ableton synths like operator and everything. Like every Ableton plugin looks the same. That's what I really like about this program. But you also get like a little bit of serum in here, you know. There is a ton of wavetables here. So there's basic shapes, harmonic series. So all of these are different wavetables. So it's really useful, and you can cycle through the wavetables just like serum. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add a chord progression. It's just so I'm going to go ahead and try to make like a super saw. And what's cool is there's different view modes. So we have this mode, which is like this is like a linear view, and this is a polar view. So, okay, over here. So if I want to make a super saw, I have my wavetable over here, and this is the voice tab over here. So this is at -9, just because I guess they don't want it to clip so hard. So you have poly, and you can play up to 8 voices. So there's poly and there's mono, just like in serum. And unison, you could do classic. And you can basically adjust the unison spread here with this amount. So this is how you would get that classic super saw. So let's go ahead. Let's open up the oscillator 2 tab. And let's do the same thing, except let's bump this up an octave higher. So you can adjust this by semitones rather than octaves. So I'm going to bump this up 12 semitones. So what's also cool here is we have two filters, and I'm pretty sure this is one for oscillator 1 and one for oscillator 2. So we can turn on this other one. And what there is there's serial and then there's parallel. So serial is we have two bands that are controlling both the sounds, and parallel is we have one band controlling oscillator 1, one band controlling oscillator 2, or that might be split. Let's see. Okay. So parallel is it routes all oscillators into both filter 1 and filter 2 and adds half of each signal together. So just like parallel processing. And then split routes oscillator 1 to oscillator 1 to filter 1 and oscillator 2 to filter 2. So these are all really important things to know, because once you understand how they work, you can get a certain sound. So we can also go into this mod source and we can go to LFO and we can actually start mapping things to things in Matrix. So let's look. I want LFO 1 to adjust filter frequency 1. Oh, and I have LFO2 doing that too, so I don't even need that. I could do. So let's click there. There we go, and it pops right up. So you can also have these LFOs automate a bunch of different things. So if I click on this wavetable or this oscillator 2 position, it'll say oscillator 2 position. So we can have it adjust that. Also, you'll notice that every time a new MIDI note is triggered, this LFO re-triggers, and that is something that we can turn off. And maybe I want to do like a weird, crazy detune. So let's see if we can sort of play around with this a little bit. And you can also add this sub, which would be really good for like making a bass, like the sub oscillator in Serum. But I'm just using this to add to that. You could transpose that as well. But basically, we can get some really, really cool effects in here. So this wavetable synth is really awesome and definitely a like a necessary addition in my opinion. Because with everybody using Serum, I think that Ableton just felt the need to sort of like add something and bring something to the table that was just a little bit more than operator. But you know, we could go in for hours and sort of mess around with these things, but that's essentially how it works. And yeah, that's pretty much it. There's so many different possibilities. Okay, so the next thing we're going to talk about isn't anything like new synths or new audio effects, but just some user interface creative and workflow improvements. So like I said before, Ableton didn't make any changes to its user interface, but some subtle tweaks in things that just make things look better, seem better. So you'll notice that everything just feels a lot more crisp. And I don't know if it's just me, but let's go ahead. Let's see if we can make like a MIDI clip or something, and you'll definitely notice a difference there. And so you'll see that these are solid blocks. So basically, there are two different types of views here. And we could do the same thing with a loop if we had a loop, because this is one of the more important things in my opinion. So we have this vocal loop here. So we have this view, which is actually like the fade view, and you can toggle. You'll see that you can't automate things here though, and you toggle back and forth of that with A. So this is kind of annoying, and seems to be everyone's big complaint with Ableton 10, but I've actually gotten used to it. The only thing that's annoying is sometimes I use this keyboard right here. So if I wanted to like play in notes with my keyboard, then I can't toggle back and forth with A. So I might actually want to route this to a different button, but that is just the one annoying thing about Ableton, the new interface that I don't like, is the fades just are definitely a little bit more annoying to work with. But the good part is if you're not fading things and you're just working with automations, it's really easy to copy and paste things, because if I just wanted to copy automation in Ableton 9, I would need to bring it into this automation window and copy it there. But you can do it here as well, because you see if you select this clip, if I just drag across and select it, you'll notice that it's just selecting here. It's not selecting the actual clip. If you want to select the clip, you actually have to drag up onto the clip. That's another thing that I really kind of didn't like at first, but I'm getting used to it now. So another cool part about Ableton 10 is the favorites. And what you can do is you can, or these collections, you can hit edit and you can have multiple different collections over here. So if I wanted to enable all of them, maybe one was VSTs, samples, audio effects. So if I was like, okay, here are my favorite audio effects: EQ, utility, reverb, and I actually have some down here like master chain, these sort of things. So I can go in here and I'm like, okay, these are my audio effects that I use on the regular. Now I don't have to sift through them. Samples, I could bring my favorite kick, everything. VSTs, I could put, you know, Serum in there. So let's go ahead and put Serum in there. What's something else I use a lot? Serum effects. So I can go in here and now it's like all of this browser is just reduced to my favorites that I use on the regular. And if I want to get rid of them, you can also right click and add them to certain things. So if I click this, I've added it to the green tab, and then you can hit clear all colors and that will remove it from everything. So you'll see now in VSTs, there's nothing there. So you can select, or you could hit 0. 0 is the shortcut. So now you'll see that none of it is there. And that is a really, really cool thing, because as you can see, I've almost done it for myself down here. Tascione samples, Tascione audio effects, And those are my favorite samples that I used. I had to make my own, but now Ableton has added its own folders for you to do that yourself. So the next thing we're going to talk about is the MIDI editing. So I'm going to type in MIDI, and I want to get 3 different MIDI clips. And actually, I'm going to duplicate this down here, and I'm going to do something practical. Because if I just had 3 random MIDI clips, it wouldn't make any sense. So let's say this top MIDI clip is my chord progression, and this bottom one is my bass notes. So I want to have these low notes. So I do that, and maybe this other one I want to be my top melody, like my top line. All right, so we'll call this bottom, or we'll call this main, bottom, top. And let's make these 3 different colors just so we know. All right, and let's actually give these guys a sound. So I'm actually going to look for a preset in Wavetable. So let's do this. All right, so that is our main. So let's find a bass. Okay, and let's find a top, like a pluck. Whoops. All right, so let's listen to everything. So what we can actually do is we can select all of these, and we can edit all of the MIDI together. So what you can do is you can see that this is the top line right here. And you can see that there's 3 clips selected. So you can basically click on different, and they're color coordinated so you can see which ones are which. But let's see if we can. The hard part is getting to the ones that are overlapped on each other. But actually, hold on, can we select which clip we want to? Oh, so that's awesome. You can hover over and see which ones you want to click. So let's say I want to just be looking at these bass notes, and I'm like, okay, these bass notes are overlapping the main chord progression. I want to drop them down an octave. So now we can see all of our MIDI on top of each other. So this is really helpful. So if I wanted to make this top, and what we could even do then is fold it, and I can make these melodies so easy because I'll know that all of the notes that I'm picking are in the key of the chords. But for now, I'm not going to do that because I know this chord progression. So this is the melody I want to pick. And it's really helpful just being able to like look at everything and see, you know, exactly where this note hits, exactly what notes are playing what. So, I mean, this is such a huge thing for writing melodies because there's been too many times where I've been switching back and forth and I'm like, okay, wait, where was this? Where was this? Like, are these on the same beat? Like, what's going on? So this is really helpful, and especially the color coordinating is just great because you can be like, okay, this is the purple, this is the green. Like, if they were all the same color, it might get a little confusing, but the fact that these MIDI notes are color coordinated and you can do them on top of each other is great. Also, doing this with drums is huge. You can make MIDI clips for your snare, your kick, and all the hi-hats and set the root notes to whatever they want to be. And like, you can just look at it almost like it's a drum rack. So it's super useful for this. And it's something that I haven't used enough that I definitely need to be using. So the last thing that I'm going to talk about is the biggest thing for me, and that is grouping within groups. So no more, you know, you don't really need to say much more. I can group this, and then I can group these two within that. So if I just wanted to process the main chords and the top line different from the bottom, like let's say I just wanted to EQ them together, I can do that by grouping just those two. So what I had to do before this was I would have to make a new track, and I would have to call this top bus. And then I would have to set this in, and then I'd have to route this and this to top bus. And that is how... That's how I used to have to do it, and that's really annoying because that was a lot more steps than just grouping. So then we can call this top group. So it really just makes things a lot easier and is one of the biggest improvements of Ableton 10, in my opinion. So have you ever had a really long MIDI note and you wanted to just listen to a certain part, but you had to go all the way to the beginning so the MIDI could start? This actually, you can start this in the middle. So let's go back to this. You'll see that I'm starting this in the middle of this MIDI note here. And it plays. And I was like, oh my God, I didn't even know that was a thing. And I accidentally did it. And I'm like, wait a minute, hold on. Is that playing while it's not starting at the start of the MIDI? And that is huge. That is huge. So another thing that is really cool is this capture. So there's a thing called capture, and I'm going to delete these MIDIs for a second, and I'm just going to arm this MIDI track and just start playing things. So I could do like... So if I was like, damn, I really wanted that to like be recorded, you can hit that capture and it remembers what you played. So that is like really awesome. So now I have all the MIDI there that I need, and it will do its best to like match the BPM and like get it all right. So now we have... So while it's not perfect, I mean, all the MIDI notes are there. You can select everything and quantize it and, you know, make it all the same length and whatnot and really clean it up. But if you were just like doodling around the piano and you're like, oh my God, what was that? Like, that was incredible. I want that back. Ableton will actually remember what you did. So that is just a really cool feature. So basically you play and you hit capture and boom, it's like, it's right there. So, yeah, I just did that on my actual keyboard, like my computer keyboard, so that's why it sounds like crap. But anyway, it doesn't matter. Sometimes I'm doodling around and I'm like, oh man, I really like that idea, and then I have to try to recreate it or replay it. and it's just sort of annoying. So whenever you're playing around, you could always hit capture and it'll just like sort of remember what you did. So it's really, really cool. Another thing that's cool is when you are, for Ableton 9, when you would click on this MIDI clip and you would hit your right and left arrows, it would just move the cursor wherever it is. But you can actually click on here and move these right and left. So this is really useful, like if I'm adjusting drums. And you could do it by 4 bars, which is really cool, like a big jump like that. So I don't know, there's a lot of really cool things you can do with that, and that's definitely saving me a lot of time. Sometimes I just hate clicking and dragging. It sort of hurts my hands. It's just so much easier to smack those right and left arrows. So just some other little things I'm going to go over, some little shortcuts and whatnot. So if we hit loop, let's go to this loop. If we hit R, it reverses it. So that is really helpful, especially if you're just messing around. You can sort of just be dragging things anywhere, hit R, and it just reverses it. So really, really helpful. So other cool things, when you select a certain area, instead of, you can double click and make MIDI clips. So really cool. You can just like double click anywhere, however big the grid is. If you have it like wide grid, you can make a big MIDI clip like that. So double clicking like that is pretty easy rather than hitting Command Shift M. Also, another cool thing is you can partially deactivate one part of the clip. So in Ableton 9, if you were to select any little part of a clip, it would deactivate the whole thing. So now you can just deactivate part of it. So you could sort of go in and just really mess with clips, deactivate certain things, anything like that. So those are just a bunch of really little things, but all of it really like adds up to creating like a better workflow. And that's what it's all about. The reason that I switched from Logic to Ableton was because of the workflow. And I think that any improvement to the workflow is just worth, every penny. But that is all for today. And I hope you guys find some other really cool tips and tricks in Ableton 10. But thank you guys for watching. I'm Tascione, and this is Academy.fm.